and thrive according to the variety he speaks. Within Ed governorate, one can notice the existence of myriads of accents, which alongside the accent used in MCD, or the variety investigated in this study, for example, in variety. MCD is located in the south of the capital Sana'a, mostly an agricultural society. The population is about 2.5 million. Ed governorate comprises 22 directories, each of which has its own remarkable accent within a variety. But one always notices that people from the various directories of Ed governorate tends to use a variety as a common denominator for social interactions. Although all accents of a variety are mutually intelligible, people regard the accent of MCD as a more sophisticated accent and as a way to avoid originalism. Literature review. A study of Yemeni variety is done by Tawfiq Sharabi in 2010, prosody and morphology as mutually interacting system. The case of Yemeni Arabic in Iflop, Hyderabad, India. This dissertation studies the interaction between prosody and morphology in Sharabi variety of Arabic. On the prosody front, this dissertation examines and accounts for the stress phenomenon in the variety and compared it with Yemeni and Cairo. On the morphology front, this dissertation studies subject agreement and symbolic morphology in Sharabi variety and compared it with MSA. Diagnosis according to version 1959, speech community have an high variety that is very prestigious and low variety with no option status, for example, variety, which are in complementary distribution with each other. This situation is applicable with reference to a variety and MSA. A paper related to Yemeni variety has been made by Najat Ahmed Rosubah, October to December 2011, entitled The Effect of Wire Replacement on the Phonological Structure of Verb Form in Hadrami Dialect. It deals with substitution of ya for ja, which result in change in the phonological and morphological structure of the verb form, past, non-past, and imperative in Hadrami variety. It also shows such replacement of sounds results into establishing a syllable type and acceptable in MSA. The review of literature also refers to a number of studies that attempt to describe some varieties of Arabic in the Arab world. Now let us talk about theoretical models of morphology. There are three models of morphology according to Hawking, 1954. Item and arrangement conceived as object-oriented concatenation in which morphemes are not distinguished with basic and non-basic alomorph. No notion of basic alomorph. Example, the plural markers saza is are independent and have the same status where in each of these morphemes, this sasa is attached to both back and Churchill respectively, characters indicating their address for concatenation. This model of morphology is largely unstable for describing theory. This is the example for that. You can find that 0 becomes I in context of minus consonant, and also 0 becomes I becomes 0 in context of minus consonant. Also, za becomes sa in context of consonant. Number 2, with za becomes za becomes sa in context of consonant, which is minus voice, and you can find here is becomes za becomes za. Item and process. Conceived as processing of abstract unit of lexicon, the notion of basic alomorphism is at the center of the concept, and the variants are conceptually derived. In this model, instead of analyzing word form as a set of morphemes arranged in sequence, a word is said to be the result of applying rules that alter a given lexeme in order to use a new word. The plural suffix formatted is will have three alomorphs, is, za, and sa, besides in and when. Even the problematic cases, like men can start with a man and apply the rules of plural formation, which automatically massage the form into well form, well form. And this is the example. So we can find that 0 becomes I in context of minus consonant, and also za becomes sa in context of minus consonant. Alternatively, also I becomes 0 and minus consonants in context of minus consonant, and za becomes sa in context of minus voice. Here we find that book. In this model, book becomes book. Book plus is becomes books. Books becomes books. Model number 3, you will find that it is applicable for Arabic, which is word and paradigm. This model in its design does not involve concatenation of morphemes in linear order, but instead involves stating full ground, inflected derived forms and a projection as projection of the corresponding morphosyntactic categories. This model is better suited to be applied to the type of Arabic language and its varieties. The following examples illustrate word paradigm variety. Here, according to this, the red color will find that it is a string of a word for katab, and we will find that it is Arabic as well as other varieties constitutes of two parts: lexical meaning, which is in the red color, katab, and grammatical function meaning. Basic lexical meaning and grammatical function meaning. Katab, which is write, past, masculine singular. Kataba, write, past, feminine singular. Tuktub, write, present, second feminine singular. Yuktubu, write, present, third masculine plural. Maktab, office, masculine singular. Makatib, offices, masculine plural. Maktaba, library, feminine singular. Kitab, book.
You don't have to read everything, but just say that characters in red color are represent the roots, and dark color represent the process, dark color represent the process. You don't have to read everything.
Word and paradigm, since the word paradigm model avoids concatenation of morphemes linear order, it is in design better suited to describe Arabic morphology and is particularly preferred to refer to the formation of plural in Arabic. Under this model, we may recognize that Arabic words, as I have mentioned before, constitute word part, katab, and where in the first part indicates the basic lexical meanings and the second part the grammatical function meaning. Scope the study. This is an attempt to provide descriptive synchronic analysis of the morphological structure of Yemeni Arabic as it is spoken by the natives of El Governorate. The study of Yemeni varieties is of immense value not only for the sake of these varieties and their relations to emissary, but also for linguistic studies in general. This is an endeavor to investigate one of the Yemeni varieties in order to document the governing roles and the peculiarities of this variety, which would otherwise remain in the dark side category. This is an initiative to encourage further studies of Yemeni and Arabic varieties to help enhance understanding of diglossia and Arabic language evaluation. Research methodology and procurement of data. Meetings and discussions with a variety of native speakers over specific topics or for general engagement and writing down relevant comments in order to elicit structural informants. Many speakers who had received some invitations would be given lexical items which were frequent in their casual speech and were asked to use these items with the attachment of prefixes and suffixes and the morphological and phonological processes of word formation in general, with reference to verbs, nouns, adjectives, and pronouns. The researcher is a native speaker of the variety. Data documentation, the data collected and then refined and populated along with their transcription and translation. IBS symbols have been used for transcription of words. Examples of the processes under investigation are sorted in such a way as to illustrate and substantiate the mechanisms behind these processes. Now coming to chapter 2, the phonology of a variety. There are 28 consonantal phoneme distributed in 9 units of articulation. 19 of them which they are in the green color back, the green color back. They have the same equivalence in English, whereas the others which they are in the next slide, they have no any equivalence in English. For example, we have next 4 are called dealerized, and the others are ha, and a. Chapter 3, morphology of a variety verbs. A variety verbs can either triliteral or quadriliteral. Triliteral, for example, katab, or quadriliteral, for example, tarja. Verbal inflection. A variety verbs can be inflected for aspect, person, number, gender. Aspect can be perfect or imperfect. As a person can be first, second, third. Gender, masculine, feminine. Number can be singular and plural. Coming to a variety derivation, the variety verbal derivation can be simple or derived. Simple, which can be sounds or weak. Sounds means that contains three consonants, neither of which is one of the semi-vowels. Whereas weak, it means it contains one of the semi-vowels which is unstable because it is not realized phonologically, and that's why we call it weak. Sound, we have two patterns, which is in the form one, called in the patterns of fa'al and fi'al. It means each verb should be on the pattern of fa'al or fi'al. For example, katab, it is in the pattern of fa'al, whereas fi'al in the pattern, for example, ghila, to have this thing. Coming to the right, we have two types, quadrilateral and quadrilateral. Quadrilateral has simple and derived, which are sound, rhythmical, and weak. Whereas trilateral verbs, it is good to mention here that one of the most interesting features that I have found in trilateral verbs, we have in a variety the features which they are existing in modern standard Arabic are decreased in a variety. For example, in trilateral we have only 9 derived verbs, whereas in MSA we have found 15. We have verb 2, verb 3, verb 4, verb 5, verb 6, verb 7, verb 8, verb 9. Chapter 4, morphology of a variety nouns. Noun formation we have two, nominal gender and nominal number. Feminine noun derived from or corresponding to masculine, for example, ustada, teacher. Second, feminine noun not corresponding to masculine, example, jama, for example, jama, university. Feminine noun free of feminine marker, a or a, which is a feminine marker. For example, hamil, pregnant woman. Masculine noun ending in a with a weak radical, example, hawa, air, shita, winter. 5. Noun of instance also has the suffix al, example, akla, amir, jalsa, gathering, come together. Coming to nominal number, we have 3 types, singular, plural, and plural. Plurals, we have sound plural, which has 2 types, masculine and feminine. Then we have broken plural types. Also, what I have found this in chapter 4, that as I have mentioned before, that in chapter 3, what I have found that the feature that it is in MSA are, in variety is decreased from in MSA. Chapter 4, chapter 5, morphology of variety adjectives. Types of adjectives.
Good.
Wait. Positive adjective has 3 types: the verbal adjective, the nominal adjective, and adjective derived from adjective. Number 2, participial adjective. We have 2 types, active and passive, and each of them has 2 dimensions. Relative adjective has superlative and comparative. Comparative has 3 types: sounds, weak, median, and weak final. Quantifiers has cardinal and ordinals, and colors of adjectives. Has 2 patterns, af'al and nasb of adjectives. Coming to chapter 6, morphology of imperative pronouns, personal pronouns, demonstrative, near versus distant, interrogative particles, relative pronouns. Conclusion: an attempt to reflect and contribute to the understanding of the diagnostic situation in Arabic by investigating certain morphological processes of a variety in comparison to MSA, a move to stir up the interest in academia to investigate Arabic varieties and enhance understanding of diagnosia in Arabic, and sharing to the traditional view that variety should not be studied academically or even represented in written form, as this would go against Arabic speakers' tenacity of their pure and holy language, for example, standard MSA. That's right. A historical account of the current diagnostic situation in Arabic, the radical change which occurred to Arabic took the form phase of abrupt regionalization and creolization, which was followed by a long period of gradual decreolization, second. Perhaps this accounts for the features that are common to all varieties, but they were from all Arabic. It is account for those features where each variety is different from all Arabic and is different from other varieties as well. It cannot be claimed that this dissertation has presented everything pertinent to a variety, but it is the first to give a variety its due status of a variety worth investigating. It focuses only on the morphological side of the variety. The study has pointed out and accounted for some differences between a variety and modern standard Arabic. Certain phonological aspects of a variety have been pointed out due to their data relevance to understanding of morphological processes, of course, in comparison to MSA. For example, it has been indicated that a variety has dropped the word-ending vocalic movements that represent grammatical cases in MSA. The study of a variety morphology is based on theory of non-concatenative cumulative morphology as proposed by McCarthy in 1979, 1981, and 2005. A variety verbal derivations of a variety derived triliteral and quadriteral, and non-derived sound and weight. While the triliteral groups has 9 forms of verbs, unlike MSA which has 15, the quadriteral groups has only 2 types, derived and non-derived. Aspects. A variety as well as MSA has 2 aspects of the verb: perfective for past action and imperfective for present, future, and sometimes the past form for present action state. Coming to nouns, in harmony with MSA system, most nouns in a variety are derived from verbs, which are mainly based on triliteral roots, but there are also nouns derived from adjectives and from other nouns as well. Nouns in MSA as well as a variety are gender-based. MSA sound feminine nouns. MSA sound feminine nouns are marked by downward water tide at the end of the noun, while a variety sound feminine nouns end in either a or a. Exceptions to this rule are interpreted by the classification of the function of the feminine plural inflection. For example, authentic feminine sound plural and grammatical feminine sound plural. The later category refers to noun considered masculine and have masculine form in singular. Example, ending in sound that marbuta high and take, but take the feminine marker at when they are inflected for plural. Pluralization in a variety is based on whether the noun can take sounds regular plural form or a broken irregular plural form. It has been observed that while MSA, as I have mentioned before, has 44 patterns of broken plural, a variety uses only 24. The dual number. The dual form, a variety partly like MSA uses the nominal dual suffixes E for dual masculine and T for dual feminine. But unlike MSA, a variety uses both suffixes in all grammatical cases, while MSA uses an, masculine, and tan for feminine in nominative, and a masculine and tan feminine in the accusative and genitive. Besides, a variety shows a tendency to use a dual quantifier name masculine and intent feminine before a plural noun to indicate duality more than the accession system deployed for dual noun formation in MSA. In addition, when it comes to noun-verb agreement, a variety considers dual noun along with plural nouns. That is, dual nouns take verbs inflected for plural, unlike MSA, which has special suffixes for verbs to indicate dual noun subject. Actually, it is good to mention that there is tendency in a variety to emit dual number with consonants, which is in contrast with MSA. Next. A variety participial nouns and adjectives. It has been pointed out that in Arabic linguistics, both nouns and adjectives derived on the basis of participial nouns are considered as noun, a point investigated in chapter 4. Diminutive nouns, it doesn't retain much of the diminutive formation seen in MSA, but MSA uses lexical words and sometimes forms not used in MSA. Coming to chapter 5, a variety adjectives, classification, positive adjective, participial adjective, national, relative, attributive, adjective, idafa, extension, construction, the positive part will have belonging to relative adjective, modifiers, and adjective of color. It has been noted that the same productive morphological system of triliteral root used in verbs and nouns is also operative for most for most adjectives, while adjective in both MSA and imperative include for number and gender. It has been pointed out that imperative does not reflect the dual category in the inflection of adjectives. Positive adjectives can be classified into three types: the verbal adjective, the nominal adjective, and adjectives derived from adjective. Relative adjectives have comparative and superlative. Relative adjectives are used for evaluation or comparison. Participial adjectives are either adjective active or passive, each of which has been investigated in terms of two properties, meaning and derivation. The property of meaning of both has two dimensions, grammatical and spiritual. The adjective of إضافة may take the definite article if it modifies the definite noun, known in Arabic as إضافة annexation. إضافة adjective is a syntactic form is binding at least is a syntactic form binding at least two nouns or a noun phrase. The first step of an إضافة structure is a noun that must appear in definite form, whereas the second term of the structure can be definite or a single noun or noun phrase. Adjective of colors and physical defects have been included together since their morphological properties are identical. They have two categories: adjective of colors, physical defects with the pattern of hat and its variant fact, and masculine adjectives of color. The later adjectives are formed by the addition of word final e in the masculine singular pronoun, whereas the feminine singular by adding the word final ye to masculine singular. Quantifiers, numerical modifiers or adjectives have been divided into two types: cardinal and ordinals. The cardinals modify a noun that possesses the attribute of singularity, duality, or plurality. The first type, cardinal 1, follows the noun it modifies and agrees with the noun in number and gender, as well as definiteness. Imperative differs from MSA in this respect, since this applies to cardinals in MSA from 3 to 10. But in imperative cardinals, it begins from 2 to 10. In imperative, if the cardinal from 2 to 10 receive the noun they modify, the noun must be overtly plural. On the other hand, if a cardinal higher than 10 directly receives the noun, then the noun modified by it will stay morphologically singular. Interestingly, ordinal quantifiers are derived according to the pattern فاعل except for the irregular form أول, first masculine, and أولى, first feminine, and ثاني, second masculine respectively. Anaphylaxis occurs here with the ordinals feminine, particularly as the sound e in the word final disappears with the additional feminine suffix a. Thus, pertinent to the paradigm shown above, it is noticed that the prosthetic theory of non-concatenated morphology is active inside, both inside and outside the boundary. Coming to chapter 6, categories. Imperative pronouns, personal pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, interrogative particles, and relative pronouns. Generally speaking, the pronominal system of imperative repeats the most conspicuous deviation of imperative from MSA. Personal pronouns are classified into independent and pronominal suffixes. Unlike MSA, imperative has only 10 categories of personal pronouns. Like MSA, imperative dependent pronouns can be dependent pronouns can be attached to verb as direct object and pronouns to indicate possession. Pronouns can also be attached to active participles as either direct object or possessive adjectives. Yes.
Why is that interrogative particles? Why not pronouns there?
Yes, actually in MSA we call it particles because it is more grammatical than functional. Yes, particles, you mean particles. In Arabic we call it particles because their function is more grammatical than semantic. And that's why we call it particles. Possessive pronouns and suffix pronouns are homogeneous except in the first person singular. There are morphological and phonological changes in each chain and most movement sounds according to these features. The number of pronouns in imperative varies from that in MSA. The MSA dual pronouns are not counted as imperative. Instead, A variety uses plural pronouns to refer to plural entities. A variety that the sound half of the third person independent pronoun is not realized when it is criticized to particles, such as ta, already plus hum, they, masculine becoming found. Unlike we say where independent pronouns are not attached to other words. A variety pronouns allow this feature as in the previous example and in the construction half preposition of plus independent personal pronoun to indicate preposition or emphatic preposition. Reflexive expressions in a variety follow the same system of MSA with some phonological formulation. In order to form a reflexive pronoun, a variety suffixes the dependent pronoun to the term itself, which is originally a noun and is used as one of three reflexive terms in MSA. In addition, the reflexive pronoun in a variety does not always have to follow the noun it refers to immediately, but can come at the end of the clause. In this case, if the reflexive pronoun is separated from its referent by an intransitive verb, the preposition be is prefixed to it, sometimes inducing potential ambiguity. Relative pronouns of a variety vary greatly for those of MSA, while MSA have various related pronouns, each of which reflects the number and gender of the referent. A variety uses only one relative pronouns only to refer to one and all. Demonstrative pronouns have been divided into near clause. This time demonstrative has been observed that the number of a variety demonstrative is less than of MSA. Besides, while MSA demonstrative pronoun system show variation not only in terms of number and gender but also for stylistic purposes. A variety tends to adopt more simplified system of demonstratives. Interrogative particles in a variety show many differences from those in MSA. Some a variety of interrogative particles reflect for gender and number, and some accommodate the attachment of certain dependent pronouns. Unlike MSA, in which interrogative particles are not marked for number and gender and do not accept pronoun fixation. Coming to recommendations, it is recommended that a variety receive more attention from the linguistic academia in order to investigate all the linguistic, morphological, syntactic, phonological, and semantic and socio-linguistic aspects of this variety. More work entails more understanding not only for the variety but also for the dialectic situation of the variety speakers. Although some attempts have been made to study some Yemeni Arabic varieties, such as the syntax of San'ani variety Watson 1993 and the prosody and the morphology and morphology of Sharabi variety in Ta'is, Yemen Sharabi 2010. Too much is still in store. Given the linguistic richness of Yemen in terms of varieties, more studies of more Yemeni Arabic varieties will lead to a better understanding of the linguistic features of the situation of MSA in Yemen and how these varieties interact with and derive from one another and also MSA. Certain areas of a variety have not been covered here. Therefore, it is recommended that further research will be done to make up for what has been missed out. It is recommended that synchronic and diachronic studies of a variety carried out in the future. Such studies would make it possible to trace linguistic evolution and development as well as interaction with other varieties. It is recommended that comparative linguistic studies be made between a variety and other varieties of Arabic spoken in or outside Yemen. It is recommended that the pronominal system of a variety be studied from a genealogical perspective individually or in comparison with other varieties. More academic attention should be made to account for reasons behind the dwindling significance of diacritics and word-ending vowels. Finally, it is recommended that diglossia in Arabic receives much more attention in practical and practical investigation than what has happened so far. Very little has been done in this regard, and most of the studies in this field have been carried out by non-native Arabic scholars. End of presentation section. I will question about yes.
Give us an example.
For
Example cases of derivation where you are this model of the site.
as I have mentioned
We
before,
have the thesis.
For example, for derivation,
We have a thesis on the machine.
I think in my yes.
Syekh Yasir. Allah.
Presentation 315. 315. Three نازل تحت. زق.